Hi guys, welcome to Grant Writing and Funding. Going through the nitty gritty of actually going through a federal grant application. Ta-da! All right, so this is a lot of how to write grants too, because you have to know how to read the request for a proposal, or what they call them in federal grant speak is a funding opportunity announcement, the FOA. So you really need to know how to look through it so you know how to write the grant. So now that you know how to get registered on Grants.Gov and you know all about how to kind of navigate through Grants.Gov, we're actually going to find a grant today and we're going to look through the whole thing. And I'm going to show you what to kind of look for as far as what's really important in there and how you can kind of leverage that for when you write the grant. And that's one of the reasons why we have this video going on as well, because I'm actually going on Grants.Gov. I'm going to pull up everything and I've highlighted stuff to go through. So please check out this video. All right, guys. So here's Grants.Gov. And here we are. We're logged in. And if you just go to Grants.Gov, you will definitely come up to it. So I love the name of it because it's also the website. But anyways, here we're going to go through this. And as we talked about before, we talked about different ways to find grant opportunities. And here you can see the search bar on the very top. It says grant opportunities. So right away, we're going to say, okay, you know what? We're going to be doing some human trafficking programs for our services that we want to provide in our community, because right now there's actually a lot of money out there for human trafficking because it's an issue. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just put in human trafficking. And let's go ahead and see what all comes up. So we said go. And remember, because I didn't put I just put the two words human trafficking. So both of those words, any grants that contain those words are going to come up. And you can see right here, as soon as I put that in, it has 642 matching results, which is quite a bit. So if you really wanted to tailor it down to make sure you're really finding not one or the other, but you're having both of those words, you can put the quotation marks around that and then you can hit search. And right away, see, now that I did that, only 19 matching results actually popped up. So we're going to look at this. Right away, it says the OVC, so that's Office of Violence of Crime, fiscal year 2018. There's comprehensive services for victims of all forms of human trafficking. And then there's another one that says specialized human trafficking training and technical assistance. And there's another one that says specialized services for victims of human trafficking. And it goes on and on. So those are the top three that popped up. And basically, they're just popping up because that's closest to your results. I don't think it has any issue on the posted date or the close date, because these are all different underneath there. But as I scroll down, you can kind of see how this goes. There's a whole bunch of different grants. So there's also one that says promote scholarship endowment. And that's USAID, so USAID AFG. That's probably in Afghanistan. So that's probably what that stands for. And then you have other ones that go all the way down, low-income taxpayer clinic. So I'm not exactly sure what all that is. There's one that for Nigeria education crisis response. So there's all different kinds of grants out there that have to do with human trafficking, 19 at this point in time. So let me check the one, because I already kind of downloaded this, specialized services. So let's see, I'm going to pop up the one, specialized services. So this one here, you have the opportunity number on the left that is a hyperlink, and that's what you're going to click on. So why am I looking here? Well, I'm an organization, say I'm a nonprofit that wants to provide certain services for victims of human trafficking. And as of today, it's May 24th, 2018. This was posted on May 14th, so about 10 days ago. And then also the closing date is 6/27, so June 27th. So I have a little bit of time, not a lot, but I do have some time to actually write this grant up. So I'm going to say, okay, let me check this out. So how would I check this out? So right there, right just on the snapshot before you go into it, you're going to be able to see, does this kind of meet possibly what I want to do? And has it closed yet? All right, so sometimes, as you can see, this one down here, chat-based technology and child maltreatment. This one, if you go across, it was posted on April 25th, and it has no close date. That means they just haven't published when the close date is yet. So it might take a little bit of time. You're never really sure, because these are different monies from the federal government. And sometimes they're not, they're earmarked for these grants, but other times, it just takes some time. So it is a tricky thing. So, and you can see quite a few can be like this. They have a forecasted budget, but maybe it's not actually there yet. Maybe, so you never really know. Sometimes this gets pushed back. But this one's also, it already has a close date. It has the funding there. So let's go ahead and click on the specialized services opportunity number. Now what this does is it brings you up to another page that has different tabs, but I love this page, and let's go ahead and talk about this page and what it means. So the funding opportunity number, that's what you just clicked on, and OVC stands for the Office of Violence of Crime. So right there you're seeing what federal agency it's from. It has the year 2018 and then dash another number. So how they actually, they have to have numbers for all of their grants. And then they have the funding opportunity title, and that's the OVC fiscal year 2018 specialized services for victims of human trafficking. Now, the next line item you see here is opportunity category, and that is discretionary. Now, you have discretionary grants. Discretionary grants are good. They're the kinds that you want to go after because they're basically what discretionary means is that it is a competitive grant. So you're able to go after it. Now, sometimes it's not a discretionary grant, so you're not actually able to go after that grant because it's one that's non-competitive. They've kind of already earmarked who they're going to give it to. So right away, you're saying, okay, cool, it's discretionary, I'm good. Possibly, you still have to look at the eligibility, but at least it's out for competition. Now, the next one has funding instrument type. It's a cooperative agreement. Now, you have usually what you're going to see 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, whatever that, you're going to see it's either going to be cooperative or a regular grant. So it'll either just say grant or cooperative agreement. Sometimes it'll say contract, but moreover, it's going to say grant or cooperative agreement. Now, if it says one or these two different things, what the difference basically is that a grant, it's just that, it's a grant, right? You still have to do your reporting. You have fiscal reporting. You have programmatic reporting. You have to adhere to your budget on any contract or grant. But, it's just like regular kind of terms. Now, cooperative agreement is where the federal government is more heavily involved with the whole process. So they might require you to also do monthly webinars with the other grantees that have received this grant. So you have to kind of report on your objectives and your goals on a monthly basis. Or they just may work with you in more depth as far as providing more training, technical assistance, coming out and actually visiting your site and being a lot more involved. So in this grant, they will be more involved, which is fine. And the other thing too is they can also decide on certain things. Like you might have to submit, these are the people we're going to hire, these are their resumes, etc. And they kind of have to approve that and the certain budget for that. So they're just a lot more hands-on, which is great, especially if you're a startup organization, like to have that support of the federal government who has, a lot of experience in managing the grants. And if you're new to managing larger grants, this is actually, I think, in my mind, a good thing that you're learning. Okay, so underneath that is a category of funding activity. And that is under income, security, and social services, law, justice, and legal services. So it's just kind of how that's cataloged under the federal government categories. And then they go down, they have a blank for the next one. These won't always all be filled out, but the main things you want to look at is what kind of grant is it? Is it discretionary? What kind of funding instrument? Is it a cooperative? Is it a regular grant? Is it a contract? And then you want to look down and say, okay, how many grants? It says expected number of awards right here. Boom. And the expected number of awards is 20. So they're expecting to give out 20 awards for this grant, which might be kind of cool. As soon as we look over here, you're going to jump, boom, right over and say estimated total program funding is 14 million. All right, that sounds like a lot, right? 14 million is pretty good, but it's not for one person. Remember, its estimated number of awards are 20. So you would say 14 mil divided by 20, basically to get the very basic understanding of how much they're giving out. And it says right here, award ceiling and award floor. So the award ceiling, what that means is that's the most you can ask for. It's the ceiling. It's the most. And the floor, of course, is the least amount you can ask for. And here it's saying 0, but a lot of times they will say, a certain number because they know you can't run the project on 0, right? But sometimes they just put 0, I think, because they're just trying to do the math real quick and get it out there. But, sometimes you will see a number there saying you have to at least ask for 50,000 because we know, you don't try to undercut people by asking for something that's inadequate. It's not like a federal bid in some ways. It's there. This is a grant. It's different. They know you need funding, and that's why they're there, to provide that funding. So ask for what you need. So that's the other thing too, is a lot of grant writers will say, go for the ceiling. Boom. If it's 700,000, ask for 700,000. There's pros and cons on that, but honestly, with my experience, you go for what you actually need. You might only need 500K to actually pull off your project and do it well. Then ask for that. Otherwise, you just start making stuff up. And grant reviewers are going to see that. They're going to see where you're padding your budget lines, and then they're going to start dinging you. So you might not actually get the grant. So ask for what you need, but at the same time, don't try to undercut it and shave it off so much that, maybe if we only ask for 150, we're going to get it because we're going to just, pay peanuts to our people, and we're not going to provide all the things that are needed or whatnot just so we can be more competitive. That doesn't serve you well either, because the reviewers will pick up on that. They'll be like, well, they're not able to service their target demographic properly. I don't see how this is going to be realistic. So they're going to ding you on that. So ask for what you need, but do it well. And make sure you provide all the justification, of course. All right. And of course, what you want to see here, there's a couple other things you want to look at. So the CFDA number is always just, you need to have that, and that's going to be repeated throughout the whole thing. But anyway, so that's just there. The cost sharing or matching requirement. Now, this, of course, is important because it's saying, as a federal grant, a lot of federal grants do require matching or cost sharing amounts. And that basically means they're going to say, okay, we're going to give you $700,000, but you need to come up, say, with 10%. And for this grant specifically, they're asking you to come up with 25%. So that's the other reason you might not want to ask for the ceiling, is because then you're going to have to come up with 25% of 700,000. Well, the math is a little different. I'll show you in a minute. But you're going to have to come up with a certain percent of matching that. And it doesn't necessarily, you have to look at the funding or the funding opportunity announcement, the FOA, to understand if you can include volunteer time. That's like in kind, right? You might be able to include in kind to off balance that amount. It's not necessarily cash, although sometimes it is. Or sometimes you can use other grants. So maybe you got a foundation grant that does not have, it's not federal funds, it's coming from a private foundation. You could use that if it applies to the project, right? The grant project you're applying to. So maybe if something, if it crosses over in some ways, you can actually use that funding to offset that matching amount. Or maybe there's a lease that you're going to provide a house for these victims, right? So you have a house that you're going to be providing, and that house is going to come at no cost from the landlord, and you can provide the lease to show, usually he can charge, $2,000 a month for this house, but they're giving it to us at no cost. So right away, there would be $24K in matching, which would be amazing. So, you can use all these different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash that you have to come up with, but at the other time, you do have to come up with the commitment letters from everybody that you're getting the matching from to show that support. So, you might ask for 500,000 instead of the 700,000 because 25% of that, it's going to be easier to come up with that amount than coming up with 25% of 700,000. All right. Anyways, so of course, the other thing here that's very important, and I love just this snapshot. You can see there's a lot of information I'm giving you just from this snapshot. It gives you so much information when you first look at it. So basically, is that something I really want to spend my time, my valuable, precious time going into and doing more research into? If right away from this snapshot, I can get a clear picture of, is that something that is actually, interesting to me? Is it going to actually be worth my time? Sorry, you can hear that beeping outside. Not sure what's going on. Okay, so the other thing on here is, of course, the date. And you saw that already. The closing date is June 27th. So they have that here. Now, as you scroll down, they tell you who's eligible. So right away, you can see, are we even eligible? And under here, it can be 501c3. So you can have, by statute, grants under this program may be awarded to states, units of local government, federally recognized Indian tribal governments, nonprofit groups. They have to have their 501c3, right? And nonprofit organizations such as tribal nonprofits. And then it goes and it breaks down even more. So you can really read this and say, hey, maybe somebody out there is going to be eligible for this grant, which would be cool. And then it just, as you scroll down, it also has the agency name, the Office for Victims of Crime, and the purpose. So the purpose, of course, is very important because when you look back at your own mission and vision and what you're really looking at doing for this project, then you want to see what their description is, what their priorities are, and say, do we kind of mix? Are we going to be a good fit together? So the purpose for this program is to enhance the quality and quantity of specialized services available to assist victims of human trafficking, as defined by the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 and amended. So OVC is interested in supporting programs that focus on one or more of these priority areas. 1, housing services. And we already talked, you're looking at getting a house for the victims. So that would fit you right away, possibly. I mean, it's a good fit. You're a nonprofit, you're a state agency, whatever, and you're going to get a house for victims. That's what you want to do. And you say, okay, this might fit us. Already we can see we're aligned. 2, economic and leadership empowerment and or education services. 3, mental health services. 4, substance abuse services. And 5, legal services. So if any of your project is doing one or more of those priority areas, you're probably a good fit, and as long as you're eligible. So then you would dive more into this FOA. And of course, it just explains it a little bit more. They're expected to give 20 awards up to $700,000. They have an estimated budget of $14 million. And then it goes on a little bit more to say they're going to make the awards for 36 months. So that's fantastic. You're going to have 3 years of funding, which is great. And that's going to begin on August 1st, 2018. So this is great. Huh. Okay, so we are back, and we're looking at this now as far as here are different things you can look at on the top. Then the history. So they've had one synopsis that came out May 14th. They haven't had any changes, so that's fine. There are no related documents. And here's your package for when you actually want to apply. We're going to see that in just a second. But back to here, this is really the link. You have a link to additional information. Once you go back to the synopsis tab, and sometimes this link is under the version history, like you just kind of have to click through these tabs to actually find where they're going to link the actual funding opportunity announcement, or the FOA. So you would link that there, and it would then pop up here. But I went ahead and downloaded it, so this is basically what you're looking at, so you can see. But let's see, you might not be able to see that actually. And here we are. So once you go through, you have the full funding opportunity announcement to actually look through. And this is what you need to apply for grants. So what you want to really look at, what's important, and we're going to kind of skim through this just so you can see, but you have to, this is what you want to look for. The deadline. Obviously, you already saw the deadline, but this might give you a little more information. It's saying that all applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 27th, 2018. And you must register with Grants.Gov to be able to submit this. And we already did a podcast on how to register on Grants.Gov, so you can definitely check that one out. And then, of course, I say don't have that be your deadline, though. Have 2 days before that deadline be your deadline, because it gets crazy if you put it off too long. So as you look down, they have contact information, and they usually have somebody that have an email or something, but Grants.Gov is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for federal holidays. So you can definitely call in, which is great. But usually they give you somebody specific. And as you can see in here, they go ahead and they link you to another email that's directly to the OVC person, the contact person. They have a pre-application webinar. Oh, that went crazy. They have a pre-application webinar, so you can definitely go to that on Thursday, May 31st, 2018. And sometimes these are required. This one in particular is optional, but I would definitely say if you're going to apply for this grant, go ahead and if it's not May 31st yet, where by the time you listen to this, go ahead and register and get on and watch this webinar. Sometimes you might download the application or the funding opportunity announcement and it's already past the webinar, right? And if it's required, then that kind of sucks because you missed out. But if it's not, then sometimes they've also recorded it and you can go and you can ask for a recording to watch the recording of it. Okay. So as you go down, they have a table of contents always, and that's great. Sometimes that's a great way. The other good thing, because as you can see, this is 46 pages long. There's a lot of federal speak in it. There's a lot of information. Some of these are a lot longer than that. That's actually not that bad for FOA. And use your search bar, honestly, but read through the thing first, and I'm going to scroll through it to show you why. So they're usually going to start off with their program description. So first they're going to tell you why they're giving the grant out and for what purpose. And this is important to read, not just so you can make sure that you actually jive, like I was saying, your mission and vision jives with theirs, but this is where you can get language to put into your grant, and they'll say, oh, wow, we like what they're doing because you're doing what they said they want to do, right? You're using the same language. So that's just a little trick for you on getting some language. Grant writing can be kind of repetitive, but as long as you understand what they're saying and you repeat it and then you put your spin on it, that's when it's really powerful. So they're saying they want to enhance the quality and quantity of specialized services available to assist victims of human trafficking. And they will provide funding to victim service organizations with a demonstrated history of providing services for victims of human trafficking. And then they go on to say there are various areas where a more focused or intense focus is needed. And that's what this is about, specialized services, right? So they're saying this solicitation focuses on a number of these identified services in order to fill significant gaps. And these are, funding will also support efforts to increase the capacity of communities to respond to human trafficking victims through the development of interagency partnerships, professional training, and public awareness activities. So you're going to want to concentrate on one or more of those things in this application. You're going to want to, I would say all of it. And actually, you have to concentrate on all of it in this application. We'll get to it. But further in the grant, they actually say, we want 2 to 5% of your budget to focus on these, on this area, and this much of your budget to focus on this area. So because you're focusing your budget on it, you're actually going to be doing something within that. You have to explain what. And then it goes down to the priority areas. And like I said, you really want to make sure that you are, doing the priorities that they want to do. And they do explain these here. They talk about housing services, and they give you more description here, economic and leadership empowerment and our education services, mental health services, substance abuse services, and legal services. And they give you the direct kind of descriptions under each one of those. And that's another great place to actually take language and put into your grant. You don't want to just repeat what they say and have no basis for it, but you can go ahead and use some of the language that they say. So an example of this would be, under the substance abuse services, programs include but are not limited to evidence-based prevention, treatment, and trauma-informed and recovery support services. And then they go on a little bit more, but you could pull some of this language and say, we'll be providing substance abuse services if that's what you're actually going to do. And then say we're using evidence-based prevention. And this is what our evidence-based prevention is. And you could name what that practice is. Our treatment is blah, and then you could actually fill in the blank of what that is. And our trauma-informed, we've had trauma-informed support from X, Y, and Z, and our recovery support services are from X, Y, and Z. So you describe each one of those things and how you implement them, or how your organization describes them, but you're using their framework and their language. Now, they're also saying here, specialized services supported under this program must be trauma-informed and linguistically and developmentally appropriate. So they want you to say in here that you have policies in place. Oh, I got someone knocking at the door. Okay, we're back. Sorry. We've had a lot of interruptions today, but anyways, all right, we are back. And as we go through this, I'm just, once again, outlining all of the very specific things. Okay, so it has to be trauma-informed and linguistically and developmentally appropriate. So you might have to actually provide, or you're going to have to show how in the case that is needed, you can provide accessibility of services for program participants with limited English proficiency and those with disabilities. So, and that states it right there. So that's really good that they have this. And that's one reason you need to read this, because they might not put that in the criteria, but it's in the funding opportunity announcement. It's in the language of this entire document. So you kind of need to go through and highlight. And then it says OVC expects applicants to offer services inclusive as possible for all trafficking victims. So of course you can't discriminate. So you need to show that you don't discriminate. And then case management, they're saying you have to include a plan to ensure that case management is provided. And they give you examples here. They give you a couple of paragraphs. And once again, this is a great place just to kind of pull language from. But once again, don't just copy and paste. You have to explain it in your own words. But it's good to have kind of their language that you can interweave with your own. Activities that compromise victim safety and recovery. And here they explain everything. So, and they're saying what you need to have is your policies, and you can really draw from this here then to say that, or, to make sure that you have these policies in place. And then they're saying here, right here, applicants that fail to dedicate adequate funding to support one or more of the priority areas identified above, and that was the housing, mental health, etc. One of those 5 things. They're saying that they will be negatively scored in the peer review. So they're already telling you that right now you have to include that. In coordinating with law enforcement, they strongly encourage all grantees to assist clients above the 18 in complying with local, state, federal, and tribal government agencies with trafficking acts. So you have to make sure that you're complying and that you're working with them. And then they want you to have at least one letter of support from a local, state, tribal, and or federal law enforcement agency. So right there, you're saying, okay, we're going to partner. You need to make sure that you're out getting your letter of support. Who are you going to get that signed from, etc. Then they go through your goal, objectives, and deliverables. And this is great because you're really going to pull, you have your own objectives for your project, but you need to make sure they align with this one. So as you go through this whole document, that's what you really want to pull. Those are the main things that you're really looking for is what is their language, what are the requirements, and how do they want me to do this? Because you might think, well, we already have these things set up, but they're going to give you oftentimes their forms of how they want you to fill things out. And if you don't use their forms, you're going to get marked off because you might not have all the criteria in your own forms. So as I go down here, I just want to show you, they talk about federal award information again, and they're talking, up to 3 years of time, $700,000, 20 awards, 14 mil total. And you have to apply through continuation. Now each year, you don't have to do this whole huge competitive process again, but you do have to submit a continuing application. You have to showcase what you've done in the prior year and how you've met your goals. And then you have to go forward on exactly, what you're going to be doing for the next year. So, and you basically have to lay it out the first time. So it's a lot easier the second time. And sometimes they even have like a 4-page form or something like a lot shorter for you to fill out for that continuation. Here, they're really telling you financial management and system of control, internal controls. Very fleshed out in this application. They have 5 components here that they're telling you what they need. And they're, it's just very clear. So you can go through this. The budget information. Now here's the cost sharing and matching requirement. This is very important because remember it did say yes, there's cost sharing that is required for non-federal funds. And as I said, there's 25% required, and you can see it right here. Federal funds awarded under the solicitation may not cover more than 75% of the total cost of the project. That means that $700,000, if you asked for the ceiling, that's only going to be 75% of the total cost of the project. You still need to give 25% more on top of that for your 100% of the project. And how they do that, definitely, it's different. It's confusing. There's a little formula, and I'm going to put this on my website because it's a little confusing. You put your federal award amount, so say that $700,000, divided by the federal share percentage, which is 75%, because remember the matching is 25. So you divide 700,000 by 75%. That equals 933,303. 93333. Here it is. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having a problem with that. Anyways, you would then multiply that number by 25%. So that would give you $233,303. There we go. So that would be your match. So your match, that's a lot for a match. So that's what I'm saying. If you don't need to spend $700,000 for your project, you don't necessarily have to ask for $700,000. If that will reduce your in-kind or your matching, your non-federal, right? If that's going to reduce that number, then automatically. So that actually might be better for you if it's easier for you to come up with that amount. So anyways, you can see it's not 25% of 700,000. That would give you a different number. This is a weird federal, because they're looking at the total amount. The total is 100 and this is only 75. You're not at, the total isn't the federal amount. It's only 75%. I know it's really confusing. I'm definitely putting this on this little formula on my website, so please check it out there just so you can always refer back to it. And of course, they're saying you can't charge for anything that was done pre-grant award. And that's another thing. Like a lot of people say, can I hire grant writers and just, pay them if the grant's awarded with the grant monies? No, you cannot, because you cannot pay for anything that's been done pre-award. And obviously writing the grant was done before it was awarded. So there's that. They have some other stipulations in here about conferences and trainings. They're saying you have to ask in advance if you want to go to these. And sometimes this one actually has a required training. But apparently now on this one, which is really cool, you can do it online. And I think because a lot of times in the past, and you're still going to see this, is the federal grants will say, okay, we require you to do one mandatory training, it's usually in DC, and you have to put that in your budget. So the grant will pay for it. But, you might be putting in several $1,000s to go to these annual trainings. And now they're doing a lot more where you can do it online because that's saving them money. You don't necessarily have to go there. And a lot of times people are jet lagged. It's a different time zone. It's not so impactful. And it would probably be maybe a little bit more impactful just from where they're at if they can get that information. So, and it saves money, and you can apply more of the money than towards your direct services or your other categories in your budget. Okay, so once again, it talks about your eligibility, and it talks about your application and submission information. Now here is what you're really looking for after you go through all of that. It tells you what is required for your application. So it says a program narrative, budget detail worksheet, and budget narrative. So they're actually going to give you one that you have to fill out. A plan for action research, project timeline, and then they say they do want letters of support, and they tell you from who, MOUs, letter of intent, blah, blah, blah. So they have different forms that are, required as well, and those will be on Workspace too. So when you go up for Workspace, you can just fill them out right there instead of filling them out like download and separate, and then you can upload them to Workspace, or you can do them right on Workspace. So that's pretty cool. But they want you to have a project abstract. Project abstract, they're saying, will not go towards the page limitation. Really read this, though, because it says, we want a project abstract that summarizes the proposed project in 400 words or less. Heed that. This isn't advice. These are requirements. Heed that requirement. Go 400 words or less, and then they say, we want it to be single space using standard 12-point font such as Times New Roman with 1-inch margins. That's how specific it is. If you get flowery and put all these pictures and make it like, multiple spaces and blah, 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 it's just going to get chucked. All right, guys? So go by what they say, even though it's boring. It's boring as all get out. Make it standard. Make it very standard to what the requirements are. And they tell you exactly what they want to hear in that. So you need to follow this. They want the legal name of the applicant. They want the proposed priority areas. And they already told you what those priority areas that they were going to focus on. So don't make up your own. Do what they want and then put your project in line with that. They want a specific description of the geographic area where the activities will be focused. They want the amount of federal funding requested. So what are you asking for? Remember, you're ceiling $700,000. Don't ask for more than that. Do not ask for more than the ceiling. They will check that out, possibly. So they're just not going to give it to you. The number of trafficking victims served each year in 2015, 2016, and 2017. I would say just make a tiny little graph, boom, so it's very easy to see. And that would be from your jurisdiction of wherever you're going to have the geographic area, of course. Now your program narrative. So that's your program abstract. That's the one single space, doesn't count towards the word count, or not the word count, there's 400 words or less. It doesn't count towards the page limitations of the entire application, they're saying. But your program narrative does. And they're saying this, it needs to be double spaced, right? They want it double spaced using standard 12-point font, Times New Roman. Just always use Times New Roman. They say preferred, so just use it. Have no less than 1-inch margin, so don't try to get tricky saying, oh my gosh, I need more space, so I'm going to make my margins bigger. Don't do that. And it should not exceed 40 pages. Now you might say, wow, 40 pages, that's a lot. Let me tell you, that's not a lot when it comes to federal grants. They ask for a lot of information, and you're trying to be as clear as possible, and you're trying to share as much as you can about your project, but you want it to be simple, guys. You have to fall in line with the 40 pages. You have to number your pages, all right? And they're telling you right here, if it fails to comply with these length-related restrictions, OBC may consider such noncompliance in peer review and a final award decision. That means they might check it out. The other things I see as a grant reviewer, I see what is done is as soon as you go past that 40 pages, say if you had 50 pages or 100 pages more on there, they would black it out. So all of a sudden I have a PDF that I'm downloading. It's 150 pages, but I'm only able to see 40 of those pages. The rest is just black. So if you're getting really cutesy and you're saying, we're going to throw in our business plan, or we're going to throw in this, and we're going to throw in a research study, and we're going to throw in our needs assessment, and blah, 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 so it looks really good. And you don't know where those are going to land. That's the other thing. When you upload it, you might think it's going to be in this subsequent kind of direction, and it doesn't always do that. Okay, so let's go on. Let's get through this, guys. So description of the issue. This is what you want to do, and this is kind of where I want to close today. I have a couple more things, but here is what you want to use as your headers. Okay, so when you're writing, you can just take this and say, a description of issue. That's exactly how you want your grant application to look. You want it so, and why? So here for you that can't see this, it says a description of issue, and then it has all of these bullet points underneath that, and it says describe the specific problem and the geographic service area that the project will address. So it has this very specific thing, and then the next bullet point is current services available. You want to use all of these as your headers and subheaders, like literally. And then you just want to write to this criteria. You don't want to make up your own. You don't want to go out on a tangent and talk about other things. Write to this because that's what you're going to be scored on. So you want to have it reflected. Like I said, though, you want to use their language, but then you want to use your own examples and you want to use your own descriptions to support that language. But you definitely just, I mean, this will make it easy for you. It's not like looking at 40 blank pages going, how am I going to fill this in? You're just using all of their information and you're taking it as headers and subheaders and you're writing to the criteria. So as you go through this entire thing, that's pretty much what you want to do. And then to understand, though, how they're going to score it, and, you know, just read through this, make sure you're including everything. They're telling you about evaluations. They're telling you about, okay, for this area, we have an attachment. It's, you know, addendum number, whatever, use that. So don't try to come up with your own little framework. Use theirs and then apply your information to it. Same thing, they're saying, we have a budget detail worksheet that we want you to use. Use that. Okay, and then they're even telling you things like consultant rates. You may not exceed the maximum of $650 per day, or if paid by the hour, $81.25 per hour for a maximum 8-hour workday. So they're giving you things. And when I say with budgets too, let's just touch real quick on the budgets. Look online at the federal actual allowability. So if you're looking at, you know, rates, go to the GSA website, look at the rates that the federal government uses, and then just justify your rates with that. I mean, just make sure you're not going to, you know, if you're renting a house, so this has housing included, if you are having to pay for that, or if even your lease is getting covered, you can't just automatically say, oh, landlord, tell us you would charge $10,000 a month so we can get that covered, right? And our in-kind and our non-federal. You can't make up numbers. It would have to be the fair market value, right? So you have to still use what is fair market. You can't charge a whole bunch more just because it's a grant. You can't pay your consultant $300 an hour. They're telling you right here, here are your maximum rates. You need to follow that. Okay, so as we go through this, I just want to touch, I know this is starting to get to be a long podcast, guys, and I just, there's a lot of information here, but this is how you really look, the nitty gritty of looking at grants, the federal grants, how you go through it. And a lot of these forms, as I'm scrolling through here, you see a lot of these forms of this information, that's also going to be on Workspace. It's already going to be uploaded for you. But you really need to be reading through this to make sure you understand everything and are able to, like I said, pull the language, use their language when you're describing things. All right, but the last thing, and this is interesting, they're giving you the training plans, everything they need. They're giving you details on this, and I love this FOA is a really good FOA. Even their MOUs, you have to include certain things in MOUs. You can't just have 2 people sign it. They're telling you exactly what to put in it. So they're giving you the outlines for everything. And like I said, here they're telling you, you must allocate 2 to 7% of your total budget towards this research activity. And they're going to tell you how much of your budget. So instead of you just having to create this on your own, you actually have to adhere to what they're asking you to do. Okay, so they want the letter of commitment. Here's your MOUs. You have to put the name of the organizations involved, the scope of the direct specialized services, duration of the agreement, estimated cost per victim, or cost of actual services provided. And they're telling you, even if it's a fee, if it's in kind or no cost, you still have to describe the value. What they want is describe how services will be provided to victims without the use of grant funds. All right, so in your letters of support, in those non-federal matching letters, they want to know that. They want to know the total amount of the agreement and whether or not there's a minimum or maximum number of victims who may be served under the agreement. Very specific. And you have to make sure I would just take that, copy it, put it in your MOU, and then fill it out underneath and make those your bold headers. So when the reviewer is reviewing, going, so do they have, the estimated cost? They're going to look at this. Do they have the estimated cost per victim? And then all of a sudden they see your header that says the exact same thing. They're going to be able to find it immediately. And then you'll get points. See, it'll be a lot easier for you and it'll be a lot easier for the grant reviewer. They want a project timeline. They want descriptions and resumes. Once again, they're telling you how to apply. And the last thing I really want to look at here, of course, you have to have your SAM number. Make sure you're on Grants.Gov, guys. Make sure you're all registered like weeks before, as soon as you see this. And they're way down at the back. Way down at the back, and this is usually always where it is. It says application review information, review criteria. And for this FOA, it's not very fleshed out at all. So this is what the reviewers are going to be looking at. So you need to make sure right here under the criteria that you cover each one of these things. And it's usually above, like I said, use that as your headers and everything. But oftentimes it's down here in the review information and it's a little bit different. Follow this one specifically. Use that other information, but make sure this, the review criteria, is what you're really writing. You're writing against this one right here, because right here you can see the first one, statement of the problem / description of the issue, 15%. All right, so 15% out of the 100% of that this reviewers are going to score, this one part of your grant is going to account for 15%. Project design and implementation is 40%. All right, so that's where a lot of points are going to come from, or be deducted from. So you want to make sure that is a really good section. Capabilities, and and that's 15%. Plan for collecting data, 2%. Plan for action research, 8%. Budget, 10%. Training plan, 5%. And MOUs, 5%. So that's where you get your points from. Okay. So you need to make sure all those areas are fleshed out and that, you have really good areas. But at the same time, the one you really want to be focusing on is a project design and implementation, because that's 40%. But you don't want to forget the other ones, because every percent counts in a grant. So really make sure you have covered all of those things. And as you go through it, even give this grant after you write it to somebody else and say, review this using this criteria. Before I even submit it, let me get a trial run and see how much I scored on this. Because they might say, you know what, I'm only giving you 30% because you didn't account for X, Y, and Z, right, under this. So that gives you a great information. But basically, once you get this grant all written and you submit it and you go in a workspace, then, you have to actually, it goes into a review panel. First is just make sure you have all of the documentation there. If you don't, or if you went way over in your pages or whatever, they can just chuck it out at that point. They get so many grants like coming in that first they just vet, just get rid of this things that are, you can't even follow directions, your grant's out. That's basically it, right? And then they go through the rest of them and they make sure that you're eligible and everything else. And then it goes into a panel where you have different reviewers that are sitting on a panel, and you have a chair, and then you even have a chair of that chair just to make sure everything's transparent. And they score it, and they score it based on this right here, this criteria. This is how you get your scores. And then all of these scores go to the chair, and the chair submits that to the one above them. And if you get the award, that's fantastic. It's great. It goes on to another process. But basically, if you don't get the award, even if you submit a grant, you're going to have, and you're eligible and you don't get checked out in the beginning, then you're going to get a lot of great feedback from those reviewers. You really are. And you can resubmit for the grant the next year using that feedback and using your score and knowing what you were weak at, knowing what your strengths were, and you can resubmit and hopefully get that grant awarded. So don't be discouraged, if you get your grant kicked out after spending all this time and actually writing it and going into it, because it's always, it's a product, it's a way for you to get clear on your projects and what you want to do. And then it's also a great way to be more competitive for the next cycle. All right, guys, so that is Grants.Gov. That's actually going into a grant on Grants.Gov, going into a funding opportunity announcement, and really understanding it at a snapshot level to say, hey, are we even eligible? Is this something we want to go after? You can, like I said, you can spend a few minutes just understanding that. You don't have to go through this whole process every time. Go through the snapshot approach first and figure out, is this something we want to go after? Are we eligible? If it's a yes, then you go through this process. And after you go through this, then you know you can actually start writing the grant and how to do it properly. All right, guys, if you have any questions, once again, hollywego@gmail.com. Check me out on grantwritingandfunding.com. You can get some great resources that are free all about grants and all about funding. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. And thanks so much. Bye.